My name is Gabrielle O'Brien and my pronouns are she and her. I am the Senior Project Officer representing a very dedicated ADCET and NDCO team behind the scenes for this inaugural UDL symposium. This session is being live captioned. Please press the CC button at the bottom of your screen to enable captions. We also have captions available via browser, which will be added to the chat box. Please note requirements and etiquette for this session to run smoothly are in the chat and on the ADCET UDL symposium page. We remind you to ensure your surroundings are quiet for the keynote sessions and workshops. We'll remind you that this session is being recorded. Please turn off your camera and mic for the session. And don't forget to tag us on socials with hashtag UDL Symposium 2023. On behalf of ADCET, I want to welcome you to the second day of this inaugural UDL Symposium entitled UDL in Action, the what, the why, and the how of UDL. ADCET is committed to the self-determination of First Nations people. We acknowledge the Palawa and Pakana people of Lutruwitja, upon whose lands ADCET is hosted. I also want to pay my respects to the Turrbal, Yagara and Gubbi Gubbi people where I am today in Meanjin in Brisbane. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands across Australia and pay my deep respect to elders past and present. And welcome to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining today. Please feel free to put what country you're on in the chat box. With the announcement of the date for the 2023 referendum on the Voice to Parliament, it is a good time to reflect on what we can do to support First Nations people at such a politically charged time. ADCET hopes its commitment to the voice can contribute to the future in a positive way. So yesterday was a great start to the symposium, and hopefully you will all have gleaned new knowledge to support your practice. On day two, we are very pleased to introduce our second guest speaker, Dr. Thomas Tobin. Tom has collaborated with ADCET before, and we're pleased to be able to bring you his substantial experience as an educator, scholar, author, and speaker on technology-mediated education. Thomas brings a wealth of experience, which is too long to mention here, so I encourage you to read his bio in the program website. So I'm pleased to hand over to Tom, who will be talking to you today about reaching everyone and teaching everyone with UDL. He'll let you know how he wants to run the session, so over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, and welcome everybody to day 2 of the UDL Symposium. Grateful to have everybody here. My name's Tom Tobin, and I'm with the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the United States. I'm a white man wearing black chunky glasses, and I have a giant black mustache. I'd like to say thank you to ADCET for hosting me and for making this opportunity for everybody. And I want to give a shout out, and I also want to help you be part of our session today. In Zoom, you have the reactions button, and this is an appropriate way to send a heart or some applause or a little party horn or something, because we have a lot of people to thank. Our captioner, her name is Helen. She's going to be doing live captions today. So give Helen some thanks using that reactions tool in Zoom. And keep those reactions going for Debbie, Kylie, David, Darren, Gabrielle, Alicia, Jane, and Charlie, your ADCET hosts who are making sure everything is working behind the scenes. So thank you to everybody there. And you also have a number of different ways to be in our keynote session today. You can just lurk. Think your own thoughts, take notes for yourself, don't interact with anybody, take it all in. But I am interruptible today, so you can use the Q&A feature if you have a question for me, and our ADCET hosts will give voice to as many of those as they can during our session today. Also, if you want to have a side conversation or put comments or have running commentary during the session, post those in the chat and I'll be watching that as we go along. So thank you, Elizabeth, for saying that's a great UDL approach. Now let's get started in an intentional way. On your screen is a title slide that says Reach Everyone and Teach Everyone with Universal Design for Learning. It has the ADCET logo and it's got a photograph of me on it. And let's get started with a little bit of a story. On the screen is an image of a sunlit woodworking shop of the sort that I remember from years ago working with my father as we remodeled our family home. Brick walls, work tables, benches, a table saw, racks filled with hand tools, and sawdust and wood shavings everywhere. While our webinar today is also called a workshop, it's a very different environment. No smell of wood and grease, no feel of tools in our hands, no radio playing in the background with our favorite music or a ball game. In our work today, we're in the classroom, we're working with students, we're also on Teams and Zoom. We have cameras and ring lights and microphones, partners and kids and pets in our backgrounds, and divided attention even in our classrooms. And perhaps the woodworking shop on the screen is something that you've seen only in commercials or old photographs. And this is what we're all about when we teach and we support our students. It's rare that our learners come to us having had similar experiences to the ones that we want to share with them. So one of our first tasks is to establish context, a story, something they can relate to in their own experiences. Aside from the strong social justice, it's the right thing to do arguments for engaging our students with intentional efforts toward equity, diversity, and inclusion, or EDI, there's a very practical one as well. Because our students come to us from such a variety of economic, social, gender, ability, preparation, and family circumstances, we have to assume that no two of them will bring the same combination of talents, barriers, and stories into our interactions with them. So, honoring the variability among our students isn't just a feel-good approach to being more compassionate humans, although it is emphatically that. It is also a way to lower barriers for our learners and for ourselves, to remove anxiety and challenges, and to focus our interactions on learning gains. Now, we won't get there overnight, but our workshop today will focus on the interactions that you and your colleagues have with learners, assignments, discussions, lectures, consultations, assessments, especially in your work as disability support professionals. And how can you examine and evolve that work and advocacy into more equitable and inclusive formats? Now, during our time together today, we hope that you will leave with a concrete way to demonstrate three objectives that are on your screen now. Provide students with broader access to learning interactions, help learners to find more time for study and practice, and save our instructors some time and effort in the classroom as well. How can we lower barriers for ourselves? Let's start with a little bit of a thought exercise. On the screen is an image from the 1923 silent film Safety Last, where the star Harold Lloyd dangles from the face of a rapidly disintegrating clock high above the street. As you're looking ahead to being in or supporting the classroom, but also having to be prepared to provide flexibility should the need arise, what is your biggest concern about the interactions that you or your colleagues will have with students? We'll put 2 minutes on the clock for you to think and respond. If you'd like to mute the audio while you're thinking and then turn it back on once the music is over, I'll post a message in the chat about when that music will stop. So if you post your response via the chat feature, we'll work after the 2 minutes are up and give voice to as many as we can and try to find some common themes. So I'll start with that music and I'll also put the question into the chat in just a moment here. So let's get that music going. Here's 2 minutes of music. All right, 2 minutes goes by quickly when you're thinking. Let's take a look at what people are saying in the chat. I hear a lot of themes coming up. I see Allison talking about academic integrity. I see Nicole and many others talking about the mental health crisis that we are facing post-pandemic. There's also a lot of people talking about time and time for students to actually engage, but also time and workload for those of us who are teaching or those of us who are supporting students and instructors. Sarah's also talking about what I put in place might not be carried through by others. So all the good work we do might live only as long as we're in our roles. There's also, let's see, planning will be challenging, says Sarah. Student anxiety, Sandra's talking about mental health among students. Elizabeth says not recognizing that barriers exist, but also their feelings of belonging in the classroom. How do we help our students to feel like the classroom is a place where they are part of the conversation? Fantastic. Let's see, Rachel's talking about lack of planning time to allow for the use of UDL. We have the knowledge, the skill, and the intention, but not the time. So there's that time theme coming out again. Lauren's talking about suiting the needs of students without working face-to-face with them. And we might actually touch on that in slide number 12. So awesome there, thank you. Himani is saying managing cognitive load as well as catching up with artificial intelligence. And while we won't talk directly about large language models and artificial intelligence, I can turn you over to one of your colleagues at Deakin University. Philip Dawson is one of the researchers there. He's written a 2-pager on how we can work ethically with artificial intelligence and large language models. I'll encourage you to seek that out. Here are some of the other ideas here. Belinda's saying missing the point or misreading the situation and inadvertently complicating matters instead of facilitating. When was the last time you heard an administrator talk about something that sounds good on paper, but they didn't really think through all of the consequences? Well, when we think about universal design for learning, the challenge is juggling things, right? How do we help people to adopt good design practices when they're already busy? And this allows me to make 2 different promises to everybody. And thank you for putting your ideas into the chat. We're going to capture those and share those out later. My 2 promises for you today. 1, I do not want to add to your workload today. In fact, my promise is I want to take some work off your plate. I want to help you to understand how to choose where to start with universal design for learning efforts so that you end up solving a challenge, taking less time to do things, or you help your students to have a smoother experience, and you as a support staffer or as an instructor yourself end up having things go more smoothly. So promise number 1. And promise number 2, I would love for you to leave this keynote with 1 action that you can take tomorrow that won't take you more than 20 minutes. I want to help you to get a start with universal design for learning. And in all of the other sessions in this conference, you're hearing fantastic ideas about how to frame UDL, how to do it, and how to share it with other colleagues. In fact, I'll be doing one of those workshops later on how do you talk to the people who couldn't come to the UDL symposium and get them to join you in your journey. So thank you everybody for sharing your ideas and doing a little thinking with me as we get started. So now on the screen is an image of students studying together in a classroom. One student has hands on a keyboard, some have laptops, some have mobile phones, and one student is pointing to an off-camera screen where someone is projecting his computer desktop. When we say universal design for learning, this is what we mean. Provide learners with multiple means of engagement. How do they get engaged with us, and how do we help them stick with us even when things get challenging? Multiple means of representation. This is what we think about when we think about accessibility. This is captions on your videos, text transcripts for your audio podcasts, describing what's on the screen when you're giving a presentation like I'm doing now. and multiple means of action and expression. How do learners show what they know? Give them options for how to do that. I'd like to suggest that we can also simplify that official definition of UDL into +1, and there's that +1 on your screen as well. +1 thinking means if there is one way that an interaction happens now, we should make just one more way. This is not perfect universal design for learning. And I don't think we'll ever get to perfect UDL where there's just no need for individual accommodation. I think most of us on this call will still have jobs even after we implement universal design for learning. But before we get into strategies, we should do a little defining of our terms. When we say UDL, we can think that we're referring just to learners with disability barriers in their environments. That's a common misconception among many of our colleagues. So have you ever wondered why our disability support staff seem to be so overwhelmed lately? If you are one of them, you know the answer to this one. There are three good things happening that are causing that overwork. One, we are at least nominally not discriminating against people based on their mental or physical characteristics. Now, yes, we have a long way to go yet. All the same, though, more and more different learners are part of our colleges and universities than at any time in the past. And second, 2023 marks the first generation of college learners in Australia who have spent their entire K through 12 experience under the benefits of the Australian Disability Discrimination Act from 1998, the Disability Standards for Education in 2005, and the Disability Services Act in 2006. We are now starting to serve university and vocational ed students whose prior experiences include self-advocacy and more normalized help-seeking behaviors. We're still on this journey as well. And third, we've collectively identified a number of accommodations, things like extra time on tests, alternative format materials, interpreters in the classroom, and note takers that lower barriers effectively for people experiencing the most common barriers in our learning environments. And I want to give a shout just as a pause here. Joanna in the chat has put the link into that Cradle Deacon resource that I mentioned earlier. Thank you for the support on that and for finding that link. So let's flip around the idea though. Why are our disability services office so busy? Well, the majority of the accommodations they determine with the students whom they serve are for things that we could address in systematic ways. Do you need more time for tests and exams? Offer everyone untimed tests. Do you need content in more than one format? Provide multiple formats to all of your learners. Do you need help taking notes and studying? Well, create a collective set of notes and study guides with the class. These are things that our instructor colleagues can help us with and our support staff colleagues at our institutions can do as well. Universal Design for Learning asks us to identify the places where we see patterns of barriers. Lots of students requesting similar disability accommodations. Everyone in the class getting a concept wrong on a test and then the instructor has to reteach. Getting the same question by email over and over about an activity's instructions because people are confused. These are the places where I can do promise number one with you. Start with those pinch points. Start with those things. Once we know where the barriers are in our learning interactions, we can take purposeful steps to lower or eliminate those barriers. On the screen is a pyramid with UDL at the bottom to provide choices to the majority of learners. Then special services based on large groups of learners. Those are the patterns we talked about a moment ago. Then a smaller segment for individual accommodations. And at the top of the pyramid, personal assistance for a very few people. While we will never get rid of the need to make one change one time for one person, we can dramatically lower the need for everyday affordances through the use of intentionally inclusive design models like UDL. As our CAST colleagues, the neuroscientists who figured out UDL way back in the 1990s, they said in 2002, our goal is, quote, to make it accessible and appropriate for individuals with different backgrounds, abilities, and disabilities in widely varied learning contexts. After all, every student who is admitted to our institutions, they've got the chops to be there and succeed. So we're not talking about lowering our standards or making our course content easier or simpler. Rather, we want to keep the rigor and challenge in our subject field at a high level. College is supposed to be where you learn new things, but we want to lower access barriers to being able to take part in the conversation in the first place. And you heard a lot of folks talking about their big concern being that sense of belonging. Do students feel like the classroom is for them? Promise number 2 was I want to give you some things you can do tomorrow. Here we go. On the screen is an image of a hand with the 5 fingers spread apart, lit from behind to indicate the number 5. As we started our keynote here, I want to suggest 5 specific things you can do to implement UDL in your teaching, your service, and your student support interactions. Then we'll broaden our scope a little bit and start applying UDL to multiple means of engagement, representation, and action to your own everyday work. So as we get started, here's strategy number 1. Start with text. On the screen is an image of a TV commercial. It's a script. The writers are selling miniature meals inside those little coffee pods that go into your coffee maker. Now, while I don't think I'll be putting 2 ounces of, ooh, does that say corn dog flavoring into my Keurig anytime soon? Having a script, though, is a good idea. If you have a script, a description, or other speaking notes, you automatically have that +1 version when you create media based on it. So build multiple paths based on a text foundation. This reveals gaps and needs. By scripting what you want to say, demonstrate, and emphasize, you also reduce the amount of off-topic content produced when you create other versions like audio podcast, a screencast, or a quick 30-second video demonstration. Now, we already have a lot of text. Lecture notes for instructors, how-to documentation for our support areas, process files, and the like. So pull information about the files that generate the most questions, the most emails, or even calls to your help desk, and start your UDL approach with those. This creates a solid foundation for +1 access approaches. And again, you can probably do this in about 20 minutes for one element of the work that you do with students. Strategy 2, make some alternatives. On the screen, we see a professor in her lab seated at a computer. 2 students are in the lab with her. One gives us a thumbs up signal. He knows that we can take the PDF that is on her computer screen and upload it into our virtual learning environment. Born digital PDFs can be read out loud or transferred to other formats. The other student in the lab has a video camera on his shoulder. He's recording the professor talking about a course activity. There's an image of a still camera behind that student because we can take images from that video and place them alongside explanatory text and highlight important points to reduce cognitive load. Now, isn't that dumbing it down for the learners? Well, it is if you're doing it wrong. We want to keep that rigor and complexity at an appropriate level for the content. For those of you in service areas where you're working as disability support folks or technology support people, this is where you can shine. You can help your instructor colleagues to make sure that the level of complexity is the same regardless of the path that your students are taking. Now, at first, just create 2 versions of content, materials, or interactions, and then branch out as time and resources allow. Select first those topics where students always have questions or always get processes mixed up. Create a text-only version and then maybe a video demo version of just those materials. For example, track the most common issues that students get wrong on the tests. So start with the existing materials and create explainer videos. Caption those, of course, or augment the core text with images that explain or elaborate the text-only processes and ideas. And of course, add your alternative metadata descriptions for those still images too. Then track the effect of offering the choice to learners who want more information. Do your instructors end up reteaching things less often? This is where we want to take work off of our plates. Strategy 1, start with text. Strategy 2, make alternatives. Strategy 3, let them do it their way. On the screen are 3 images: a traditional written report, a screen with audio player images, and a student speaking into a microphone. This strategy is all about how learners take action and express themselves. Think of the interactions that you or your colleagues ask students to have in class, or that your support areas have with faculty members and students, such as consultations, help desk calls, device troubleshooting, software setup, and disability support. This is what I mean by +1 thinking. If there is now just one way that such interactions happen, both in terms of modality, say in person, by phone, in an interactive online environment, and in terms of process, so for scripted interactions, add one more way. This can be as simple as adding a format option to an assignment, or on the staffing side, operating a mobile phone helpline number that can accommodate both text messages and voice calls. Strategy 1, start with text. Strategy 2, make some alternatives. Strategy 3, let them do it their way. And now strategy 4 is to go step by step. A quick question for everybody, if you want to post something in the chat real quick. When you learned to drive a car, where did they tell you to put your hands on the steering wheel for maximum control? Anybody want to post that real quick in the chat? I see a lot of people saying 10 and 2. Fantastic. I apologize that I have just also asked your age. And a couple people are saying 9 and 3. Casey says this, Jenny saying 9 and 3 now, I think. So if you think of the steering wheel as the face of a clock, and for those of you under the age of 16, a clock is a round thing with 2 sticks on it that helps you tell time. Then putting your hands close to the top of your steering wheel, that means that if the airbag has to deploy, it'll push your wrists together, and that's a split second before they whack you in the forehead and you'll give yourself a concussion. They teach our young people to have their hands at the sides of the wheel at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So if the airbag has to go off, it'll push your arms away from your body. Maybe you'll get a little bruise on your shoulders. Public safety tip from me. And somebody's saying 6 o'clock and one hand out the window. No. That's like the Melbourne driving school. So don't do that. So we've got a few people saying thank you for the public safety tip, but why are we talking about driver's education? Well, 10 and 2 is an outdated concept in driver's education, but it's a splendid way to think about how we chunk up the time that we spend with our students, whether we are in support roles or teaching roles. 10 is 10 minutes. Share some information, content, demonstrate things for 10 minutes. Then 2 is 2 minutes. Take a break from sharing. Ask people to take some kind of action for 2 minutes. Now, this isn't an iron rule, but the ratio is about right for most things that we want to learn. And it's the act of taking a break itself that helps provide space for encoding of new information. On the screen, for example, is how we might do this in an online setting or on a website. Watch an introductory video and read a case study. That's taking in information for about 10 minutes, but then come back onto a discussion board and post a case study response. Read a scholarly article, watch a video from your instructor or from your support staff. That's about 10 minutes of taking information in, and then go out and do an internet scavenger hunt and find a resource that helps move the conversation forward. And there are other examples here on the screen as well. So if we break processes into units, steps, and phases, and we create separate resources with segments that correspond to those logical breaks and scaffolding, your students are never going to watch your 60-minute lecture video, but they will watch 10 6-minute segments. They just won't do it all in one sitting. So this allows learners to reconsume short pieces repeatedly and saves staff time when you update, add to, or reorder your content as well. The result is a continuous whole that can be experienced a little bit at a time, repeated for reinforcement and study, or even experienced from multiple starting points and self-selected paths through the material. Hey, spoiler alert, we've been doing 10 and 2 in this keynote. Remember the 2 minutes of music where we started out and then I gave you some information, asked a few questions. We even paused in our strategies here because it's been about 10 minutes. All right, strategy 1, start with text. Strategy 2, make alternatives. Strategy 3, let them do it their way. 4, go step by step. And now 5, set content free. Use tools that are accessible and easy for faculty, colleagues, and students to learn. A good example is creating a screen capture video of a PowerPoint slideshow with your own voiceover, and then host the result on a file streaming site like YouTube. Whereas students would previously have needed PowerPoint to go get the file and study with it or use it, now all they need is an internet browser because it has the video player right there. Students on phones and tablets can watch the video anywhere, and content is no longer tied to the clock either. Students can review, replay, and interact at any time. And a word about captions. Although they are time consuming to create, captions provide such broad benefits that they are well worth the investment of time for multimedia content. One change of current common practices can help everybody immediately. Most of us are used to closed captions where there's a separate caption file and people have to select, I want this on or off. When you're creating multimedia resources, consider open captions, actually burning the captions right into the video signal so that they can be seen no matter who or when. Now, also upload the other kinds of closed captions as well, because that makes things searchable. But if you're putting something in a public place or where lots of people from lots of different life paths are going to see it, those open captions are really useful for folks who are coming in on social media or looking at things in a quick way. I love in the chat, John is saying, how do we add airbags to teaching? If someone starts falling asleep, push some air in their face. He's being a little facetious or a little having a little fun here. But one of the things that I saw in the themes when we were talking about our concerns was student engagement. How do we keep our students with us? One of the easiest ways you can do that, and here's a little side note, time estimates. Whether you are working with students to set up disability accommodations, or you're teaching them in a class, or you're supporting them in a support content role, if you tell students how long things are going to take, they can then estimate that and put it as part of their lives. So if you want your students to read a journal article, or you want them to fill out a form before they come and work with you for support, tell them how long it's going to take them to do that. So that if a student is going to the laundry facility and the drying cycle is 45 minutes, they say, oh, it takes 20 minutes to fill out this form. I'll bring the form with myself and I'll fill it out while I'm waiting for my laundry. How do you know how to estimate that time? Well, it's not science, but it is an art. You do the activity and then you tell your students 50% more. If it took you 10 minutes to fill out a form, tell your students it'll take them about 15 minutes. If it took you 20 minutes to read that article, tell your students it'll take them about a half an hour, and put those time estimates right at the point where they're going to need them, where they download the form or where they're about to go look at the article. Giving students those time estimates helps us as human beings. What's the one thing we are all really bad at doing? Managing our own time. And this goes for students as well as us who are working in the colleges and universities. And we've got some compassion here as well. Kathy saying, I love these down-to-earth tips. I've been doing this type of thing for years. I've been accused by some colleagues of spoon feeding students. And this is why when you talk with your colleagues, you can say things like, oh, I give them time estimates, or I help them with the structure of the content. And they'll say, oh, yes, you're just holding their hands or spoon feeding them or coddling them. That's not how the real works. One, the real world actually does work like that. If I told my boss, hey, this project is running over and we need more time or we need more resources, we figure it out. And also, it's not holding their hands if you're still keeping the level of structure and rigor at a high level for the content. There is a huge difference between procedural rigor, which is just being a cop, and content rigor. What we want to do is lower that procedural rigor. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. Fantastic. Kathy's asking, can we please have a copy of the chat feed after? I'm loving this chat. Hey, folks from ADCET, we can probably do that. And I'll ask and see if that's a thing we can do. Fantastic. And we've got a couple of other pieces going in the chat. Other people asking for copies of it and all that kind of stuff. And people, Rosario says, this is just scaffolding. Yeah, that's right. So these are the 5 things that you could do tomorrow. Now, each of these can take a long time or a short time. On your screen now are those 5 steps. Again, for those of you who will be watching the recording and looking at the takeaway handout for reference. Start with text, make some alternatives, let them do it their way, go step by step, and set content free from format requirements and from the clock. So let's make some time here toward the end of our time to start applying universal design for learning. Where in your action and interactions with learners are you already doing some +1 techniques along these lines? Or where do you see opportunities to address pinch points where things regularly aren't going how you planned them? We'll put 5 minutes on the clock for your responses. And if you'd like to mute the audio and turn it back on, I'll put a message in the chat when that's coming back. And we'll see if we can get some themes in common out of everybody's stuff here. So let me put 5 minutes of music on, and then I'll post a prompt here in the chat, and we'll end up with your ideas, and then we'll end up with some takeaways. So let me get that music rolling for you now. Here we go. All right. I wanted to make sure we had a good bit of time in order to really capture some of the ideas and thoughts that people are taking away. I'm also noticing that people are talking about things that they saw in other sessions during the first day of the conference. And I hope that you'll continue to share your ideas in those chat features, because we can pull those together and start putting lists together. Oh, I do this and you do that. This is fantastic. I want to say to Jacqueline, she asked, is it okay if I put a link to the research that I'm doing on universal design for learning? Please put that in the chat. We want to know about that. That's fantastic. And I see a lot of themes here. Chris is saying, beyond a script, I'm thinking about storyboarding videos and sharing the storyboard as an alternative format with text and images. Denise is talking about assessment information in video and text and including exemplars. And we got a lot of people giving love to the idea of giving examples to students. A few folks are talking about they're already chunking up their videos. And we even have a couple of folks, I think Susan was talking about how some of her colleagues are doing 60-minute and even 120-minute videos for their students and wondering why they don't view them. And then we have a couple other folks, I think Charles, or excuse me, Justin was talking about breaking things up in his own work. And now instead of doing 20-minute videos, he does like 6-minute videos, and students actually watch them. Students actually learn from them. So fantastic on there. Kathy's talking about giving students a choice of how they will be assessed. For example, verbal presentations, of doing a video of their own or a written report. It's not always possible, but when it is, it's a very effective way of getting the best out of our students, and they really appreciate it. Fantastic. And Annette is saying, for me, it starts with knowing your learner, building the relationships with your learners, and asking them what works for them and what doesn't, learning about their strengths, background, and cultures. Can I get on my soapbox for just a minute? That what Annette just described is differentiated instruction. So when you get a certain bunch of learners in front of you, you want to know what works for them. And that's a fantastic thing to do. Universal design for learning is actually what we do before we even know who our learners are. It's what we do when we design the interactions and environments, when we assume that our students are just going to be variable, that they're going to come to us with lots of different backgrounds and levels of preparation and abilities. And when we design not for that mythical average learner, but when we design our interactions for the people at the margins, we find that lots of people in between also benefit from it. So that's a wonderful 1-2 kind of a strategy, is to start with universal design for learning, but don't forget that when you get the actual learners there in your space, to interact with them, listen to them, and work with them. So UDL helps you to do differentiated instruction in an effective way. And we've got some fantastic ideas in here, and people are starting to really thread the conversation in the chat. So please keep coming with this. Chris is saying, I love the video chapters idea. Can't even find who said it now, but I'm thinking about doing the same thing in YouTube. I will share one last idea that all of your ideas are sparking for me. Don't try to do everything at once. You will burn yourself right out, and it is not a sustainable pace. Take one action, remedy one challenge, one barrier, and see how it goes. You can always come back and do more later on. So let's wrap up our time together. And this time I want to do this as a lightning takeaway. I won't put any music on, but on your screen is a table laden with food. There are tortilla chips, guacamole, salsa, the elotes, the Mexican street corn, tortillas, black beans, and a liter margarita in a glass jar. This is takeaway food that I hope puts you in mind of what you'll take away from this session. So now that you have been part of our conversation, what is one thing that you want to try out, steal from someone else, have a question that you still want to ask, but what's one big takeaway from our time today? And I'm just going to post that in the chat here, what's your one big takeaway from the time today? And we've got a couple of other votes for, can we get a copy of the meeting chat? And we can certainly do that. That's awesome. Post these in the chat and I'll shout out as many as I possibly can as we go through. People need time to read and probably 50% longer than I might read it. Use one more method, chunking and chaptering my videos. The huge difference between procedural and content rigor. Don't try to do it all. Use practical strategies. I'm going to include time estimates. Never stop rethinking my strategies. Share the concept of UDL with my colleagues and get them on board. +1, one thing at a time. It's not hard to make it easy for learners. Incorporate micro breaks in teaching. Starting small, including time estimates. Encourage sustainability. The +1 reminder. Freeing up content. Confidence to start. We don't have to do it all at once. I want to encourage time estimates and 10 and 2. Music to hold space for writing in the chat. And one takeaway, do one thing first. Baby steps. Design for the people at the margins. Procedural and content rigor are different things. Start changing only where you see problems or pinch points. Do one thing at a time. We've got a lot of love for those time estimates too. Fantastic. And John says, separate bowls for each food item gives everyone a choice of what to eat or not, and not having to cater for dietary requirements with separate meals, kind of like chunking. You know, I've been sharing this image on screens for a long time and I never really figured that out. So thank you for that. And Carla says, attend more of Tom's presentations. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm so glad that we got to share some key ideas and then let you all loose to start helping each other to take that one first step. So I want to say thank you so much for being part of this inaugural UDL symposium. And if you're curious to learn more about universal design for learning and other teaching approaches, you can go to cast.org, and thank you, Gabrielle, for putting those links into the chat here. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, I'd love to hear your story when we have some more time. You can find all the ways to connect with me at thomasjtobin.com. So thank you so much. This was brilliant to hear all of your ideas, and I hope that you are energized for the rest of the day today and the remainder of the conference. Let me turn it back over to our hosts for some wrapping up conversation.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. That was fantastic, and I can see a lot of love through the reactions. I hope everyone has gleaned something new today. It looks like you have, and it's really great to see such lively interaction in the chat. As I've said in the chat, we will have all the materials, all the recordings, all the chat links, etc., available after the symposium. We'll have to give us a little bit of time to get all that together. But again, thank you, Tom, so much. That was a fantastic presentation, and we really we're really grateful for your participation in this. And if people want more from Tom today, he will be running a workshop this afternoon. In between now, we have some concurrent sessions, and we also have some poster presentations on our website. So please enjoy the rest of today. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks for inviting me, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Bye-bye now.